The galaxy had become a battlefield of shattered alliances and broken promises. Among the chaos, James Reynolds, a seasoned human soldier, found himself on a remote, hostile planet, deep within the Xerian Empire's territory. His mission was simple: gather intelligence on enemy movements. Yet, as the war unfolded, simplicity was a luxury long forgotten. James led his team through the barren wastelands, the harsh terrain a testament to the planet's desolation. The Xerians had once thrived here, but now their cities lay in ruins, the remnants of an empire in decline. Intelligence had hinted at a critical target within the heart of the last Xerian stronghold, but what they found was far beyond their expectations. As they infiltrated the fortress, the resistance was fiercer than anticipated. James's unit moved with calculated precision, neutralizing threats with minimal noise, their every step laden with tension. The walls of the fortress echoed with the sounds of distant battles, but James's focus remained unwavering. His instincts told him there was something more at stake than just another skirmish in this endless war. Pushing deeper into the stronghold, they entered a heavily fortified chamber. It was there that James first laid eyes on her, Queen Xera, the ruler of the Xerian Empire. She stood tall, her regal bearing unmistakable even in captivity. Her deep violet skin shimmered faintly under the dim light, her eyes burning with a mixture of defiance and desperation. The queen was surrounded by Xerian soldiers, not as protectors, but as her captors. It was clear that this was no mere power struggle. It was a coup. Her own people had turned against her, seeking to end her reign and perhaps, with it, any hope for peace. James knew the strategic value of capturing such a high-profile figure. The orders were clear: eliminate any threat, secure any valuable targets. But as he watched the queen, a different thought began to take root. Here was a leader, betrayed and left for dead by her own kind, yet still unbroken. Could she be the key to ending this conflict? Could saving her life pave the way for negotiations that might finally bring peace? Time was running out. The sound of reinforcements approaching echoed through the corridors. James had to make a decision. The easy choice was to leave her to her fate, to avoid the risks that came with such an unpredictable move. But James had never been one to take the easy path. "We're taking her with us," James declared, his voice firm. His team exchanged uneasy glances, but followed his lead. They had been through too much together to question his judgment now. Swiftly, they dispatched the queen's guards, and James approached her, offering a hand. Xera hesitated, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. "Why?" she asked, her voice sharp, tinged with suspicion. "Because this war has gone on long enough," James replied. "And maybe, just maybe, you're the one who can help end it." With a slight nod, Xera accepted his hand, and together they made their escape. The journey out of the stronghold was perilous. Every turn presented new dangers, and the narrow corridors became the stage for intense firefights. James's team moved with lethal efficiency, covering each other's backs as they fought their way to the surface. As they reached the exterior of the fortress, the planet's harsh winds whipped around them, carrying with it the distant sounds of battle. The extraction point was still several clicks away, and the Xerian forces were closing in. Xera, despite her status, proved herself to be more than just a figurehead. She fought alongside them, her combat skills honed from years of leading her people in battle. Amidst the chaos, there was a brief moment of calm as they reached a temporary safe zone. James and Xera exchanged a glance, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They were from different worlds, different species, but in that moment, they shared a common goal: survival, and perhaps something more. Their respite was short-lived. The sound of approaching ships signaled the arrival of Xerian reinforcements, intent on eliminating the queen. James quickly assessed their options, realizing that a head-on confrontation would be suicide. They needed to outmaneuver their pursuers and reach the extraction point before it was too late. "Stick close to me," James instructed Xera, his tone leaving no room for argument. She didn't protest, following his lead as they made their way through the jagged landscape. The journey was a test of endurance and willpower, each step a struggle against the planet's unforgiving environment and the relentless pursuit of the enemy. Finally, as the extraction point came into view, a final ambush threatened to end their mission. But James's tactical acumen and Zira's fierce determination saw them through. They boarded the waiting transport, leaving the Zirian forces behind. As they ascended into the safety of space, the realization of what they had just accomplished began to sink in. James had not only saved a life, but potentially altered the course of the war. The Queen, once an enemy, was now an ally, or perhaps something more. For the first time in a long while, James felt a glimmer of hope. The true challenge lay ahead, in the uncertain future that awaited them both. The journey through space was fraught with tension, each passing moment carrying the weight of uncertainty. James sat in the dimly lit cabin of the transport, his eyes scanning the ship's readouts while his mind lingered on the enigmatic figure seated across from him, Queen Zira. The mission had shifted from reconnaissance to a dangerous escort, and every second felt like a gamble with stakes that were far higher than he had anticipated. The silence between them was thick with unspoken thoughts. James's team, seasoned soldiers who had faced death countless times, were on edge. Their distrust of the Queen was evident, yet they followed James without question, their loyalty to him outweighing their fear of the unknown. Zira, for her part, remained composed, her regal demeanor never wavering. Despite the dire circumstances, she carried herself with an air of authority that was impossible to ignore. Yet, beneath her calm exterior, James sensed a turmoil, a vulnerability that she had carefully concealed from her enemies, and perhaps even from herself. As the ship navigated through a treacherous asteroid field, Zira finally broke the silence. "You're risking much by saving me, James Reynolds. What makes you believe peace is even possible?" James met her gaze, the intensity of her question cutting through the tension. "Because the alternative is more of the same. Endless fighting, endless loss. I've seen enough of this war to know it's not what anyone truly wants. Not humans, and not your people." Zira's expression softened, though the weight of her doubts remained. "My people may not see it that way. They view your kind as invaders, ruthless in your pursuit of conquest." "And what about you?" James asked, his voice steady. "What do you see?" Zira hesitated, her eyes searching his for answers she wasn't sure she could find. "I see a soldier. A man who has the strength to kill, but chooses not to. That is unexpected." Before James could respond, the ship's alarm blared, a warning of an imminent threat. The screen flashed red, indicating a fleet of Zirian warships converging on their position. Zira's eyes widened as she recognized the markings of her own people. "They've come to finish what they started," she said, her voice laced with a mix of fear and resolve. James sprang into action, issuing orders to his team. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We can't let them pin us down." The ship banked hard as it dodged the incoming fire, the crew working with precision born from years of experience. Zira watched in awe as the humans, despite being vastly outnumbered, fought with a tenacity she had never witnessed. It was clear to her now that James's words were more than just rhetoric. They were a reflection of the human spirit, a relentless drive to survive against all odds. As the battle raged outside, Zira's thoughts raced. She had always believed in the superiority of her people, in their right to rule the galaxy. But now, faced with the possibility of death at the hands of her own kind, she saw the war from a different perspective. The humans were not the monsters she had been taught to fear. They were beings who, like her, fought for survival, for their beliefs, for a future free from tyranny. James's voice cut through her thoughts. "We can't keep this up forever. We need a plan." Zira nodded, stepping forward to the tactical display. "There's a debris field ahead, a remnant of an old space battle. If we can lure them into it, we might be able to use the wreckage as cover." James considered the plan, then gave a curt nod. "It's risky, but it's our best shot. Let's do it." The ship plunged into the debris field, weaving through the twisted remains of long-forgotten vessels. The Zirian warships followed, their weapons blazing. But as they closed in, the wreckage proved to be both a shield and a weapon. With Zira's guidance, the humans turned the field to their advantage, using the floating debris to block enemy fire and even destroy one of the pursuing ships. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the Zirian ships broke off, retreating from the battlefield. James and his crew let out a collective sigh of relief, but the danger had not passed entirely. They were still deep in enemy territory, with a long journey ahead. As the ship cleared the debris field and set a course for the nearest human outpost, James turned to Zira. "You didn't have to help us back there. Why did you?" Zira looked at him, her expression a mix of contemplation and something deeper. "Because, for the first time in a long while, I see a glimmer of hope. You've shown me that perhaps there is a way forward, one that doesn't end in bloodshed." James offered a small, weary smile. "Then let's make sure we get to the other side of this together." The ship cruised through the quiet void, the immediate threat behind them, but the journey far from over. The bond between James and Zira had been forged in battle, but it was in these moments of quiet reflection that it began to truly take shape. There was still much to overcome, but for the first time, they both felt that perhaps peace was not just a distant dream, but a goal worth fighting for. The human outpost loomed on the horizon, a bastion of steel and technology amidst the void of space. James and his team were on high alert as the transport docked, their mission far from over. Queen Zira, now a pivotal figure in the delicate balance of power, was about to step into the heart of human territory, a place where few of her kind had ever ventured. As they disembarked, the outpost commander, Colonel Matthews, greeted them with a curt nod. His eyes lingered on Zira, sizing her up with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "You brought back more than just intel, Reynolds," he remarked, his tone laced with caution. "She's the key to ending this war," James replied, his voice steady but resolute. Matthews raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "Or she could be the reason it escalates." Zira met Matthews's gaze, unflinching. "If I wanted to escalate the conflict, I wouldn't be here. I'm not your enemy, Colonel. Not anymore." James stepped forward, bridging the gap between the two. "We've seen enough death. It's time to try something different. We have an opportunity here, a chance to forge an alliance that could change everything." Matthews studied James, then Zira, his skepticism slowly giving way to consideration. "All right, but this won't be easy. Trust is in short supply on both sides." Zira nodded, her expression serious. "I understand. But if we can find common ground, we might be able to end this war before it consumes us all." The next few days were a whirlwind of negotiations, strategy sessions, and delicate diplomacy. Zira's presence within the outpost was met with mixed reactions. Some saw her as a threat, others as a potential ally. But through it all, she remained composed, her resolve never wavering. James was by her side, guiding her through the intricacies of human politics and military strategy. As the days passed, an unexpected bond began to form between them, rooted in mutual respect and shared experiences. They were two leaders from different worlds, united by a common goal. The more time they spent together, the clearer it became that their connection went beyond mere strategy or convenience. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a growing trust that neither had anticipated. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars, Zira broke the silence. "I never imagined I would find an ally among my enemies," she admitted, her voice soft yet filled with conviction. James turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Neither did I. But here we are. Maybe this war has gone on long enough. Maybe it's time for something new." Zira's eyes met his, and for the first time, she allowed herself to truly feel the weight of her emotions. "James, if we succeed in this, what comes next?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "We rebuild. We create a future where our people can coexist, where we can leave the past behind." "And what about us?" Zira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. James took a deep breath, the gravity of the question hanging between them. "We figure it out together. Whatever that means, whatever it takes." In that moment, the distance between them seemed to vanish. They were no longer just a human soldier and an alien queen. They were two souls who had found something rare and precious amidst the chaos of war. The connection between them was undeniable, and it carried with it the promise of something more. But as they stood there, the reality of their situation came crashing back. The war wasn't over yet. There were battles still to be fought, and decisions that would shape the future of their worlds. James knew that their alliance would be tested, that they would face challenges that could tear them apart. But he also knew that they had something worth fighting for, something that went beyond politics or power. As the stars twinkled in the vastness of space, Zira reached out, her hand finding his. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. They were in this together, for better or worse. "Let's make sure this wasn't all for nothing," Zira said, her voice steady. James squeezed her hand, a silent promise passing between them. "We will." And with that, they turned away from the stars, ready to face whatever came next. Together,